Hello, my name is Kerryoth, and today we're going to take a look at a couple of new tanks from Forge World. And first up, these come out of the last couple of weeks, like the last 2 weeks, I think. And there was another one revealed yesterday, which looks awesome in a what the hell is this kind of way. First up is this. So this is the Sabre Strike Tank, and I will say straight away, for those of you who have immediately had your eye caught by the price, yes, that is expensive. That is £86. You might be thinking, but it's a tank, it's going to be pretty big. Not true. In fairness, this version does come with every single weapon, which is why it's more expensive. I think if you buy the hull and one of the main weapons separate, I believe it comes to 60 quid instead of 86. Is it 62? One of the two. So not quite as powerful a blow to the wallet as the all options included version. I mean, if you're going to go heavy on the magnetising, to be honest, well, there you go. You've got an excuse to right there. But I like this thing, but this has got a weird, it feels like there's a weird middle ground with this tank, because this is essentially a one-person vehicle. It's got a driver who is also the gunner. It's just like a fast little tank. And it kind of looks, on the surface, without context, to be a decent size, and you can kind of look at it and go, it's another quality 30k unit, the 30k tank there, looks good, looks beefy. Except when you actually look at it next to a person, which we will get to in a second. There we go. That is that's a Praetor and Cataphractii armour, and that is the tank, and that is suddenly very baby. And I'm in two minds over this particular tank, because, on the one hand, I do like the design of it. I really like the design of it. It looks weird, it looks funky, it looks cool. It has an experimental feel to it, almost, with the gun on top and out the front as well. It kind of feels like an experimental tank hunter, which I quite like the vibe of. The only problem is that the side part of it, like the side of the hull where the tracks are very Sicaran in shape. Now, we've got the Secon Venator up here. It's obviously not exactly the same. It's just very close, which is fine in terms of consistency, but the problem is that as soon as I realised it looked a bit Sicaran-esque, I mean, obviously, the Sicaran has got bulkier sides, I think most likely because of the sponsons that you've got there. So there's a las cannon on the side of this Venator. I think the placement of the armour and the thickness of the armour on the Sicaran does a lot to differentiate between the Sicaran and the Saber. But a little part of me is like, if you moved that bit of armour on the Saber back slightly and just made it a tiny bit thicker, that would just be a Sicaran's baby brother. That would be a Venator's baby brother. And it's not spoilt it, but now every time I look at it, I find myself going, now, if it was a bit bigger, I would like it more. But if it was a bit bigger, would it not just be a Sicaran? Would it not just be a different tank with the same shape? There are things that differentiate them, obviously. The hull is a slightly different shape, like the compartment where the crew sits is a different shape. They're very sensibly, put the gun on the other side, on the Saber. So, on the Saber, if you're looking at the screen, the gun is on the left, or on the right of the tank, whichever perspective you're looking at. It's covered both ways, but it's on the other side on the Venator, which I think makes quite a big difference. That and the placement of the armour over the tracks, along with the thickness of said armour, does a lot to differentiate them. But there is definitely an element, to me, of, hey, we can shrink this down in CAD, and we've got a nice template for a small tank right there. I both do and don't like that in a way, because on the one hand, it all needs to be consistent. I think that's fair to say. I think even when it comes to things that look a bit more experimental, that look a bit more prototype-esque, which to me these do feel like that, you still want to maintain consistency across the range. You want everything in, all the Space Marine stuff in 30k to at least look feasibly like they are from the same force. And this, undeniably, looks like it's from the same force. But, by that token, for my money, it feels a little too similar to other stuff in the range. It feels a little too similar to the Sicaran, because when you look at the overall layout of stuff, there are vague similarities between the Fellblade and the Sicaran, but they're not the same. The shape isn't the same. The tracks, there may be similar layouts here and there, but they're not just the same thing but smaller. This has an element of that going on, which doesn't spoil it, but does occasionally just make me pause and go, is it too close or is it not too close? Is it a little bit too small, or is it actually just like a perfect size for what it is, but I expect it to be bigger due to the kind of, like, just the kind of, the visual of it. It kind of looks like it should be a bit larger than it is, which then just puts it in the same ground as another vehicle entirely, even though it's not the same, but it kind of looks the same. It's a weird one. I do like it, but yeah, it's kind of, I keep going back and forth on whether that's a problem or not. When I say a problem, it's not really a problem, it's just a personal opinion thing, but you get what I mean. Now, the other thing that was revealed, which I absolutely love, was the Legion Arquitor Bombard. So we'll have a look at that. So, oh, and also these, the Interemptors, which are Dreadwing, Dark Angel Dreadwing infantry with what looks like some sort of plasma flamer or plasma incinerator thing. There's a definite flamer thing going on, and there's definite plasma going on as well. I actually think if you wanted to do the Hellblaster thing without having to touch Primaris, this looks like a pretty good bet. This looks like a pretty nice way of doing it, to be fair. Those weapons do look cool, they do look interesting, and they have that. They do have that feeling of Dark Angels have got stuff that no one else has got, which obviously maintains into 40k. Although it also applies to Blood Angels and Space Wolves, and yeah, but I do quite like that unit. It looks menacing and a little bit weird because the weaponry isn't quite right, which, to be honest, feels perfect for Dark Angels. But the other thing that was revealed is this, which is the Legion Arquitor Bombard. Architour? Look, either way, take your pick. And I really like this. It's a bit mad. It's definitely a bit mad, and I will say, having made the reference of like someone learn how to shrink the Sicaran in CAD, especially from that angle, there's a fair amount of that going on here. Admittedly, it is obviously helped by the fact that the tank is backwards. I mean, compared to the Sicaran, which obviously, I mean, again, it's a case of it's not a bad thing, but those side sections of the tank are very much the same, very, very similar. More similar, I would argue, due to the bulking out of the armour and the fact that this has got side sponsons, which, you know, the Saber doesn't have. With covering the tracks over with armour pretty much all the way down at the back, and yeah, like the extra armour there does a lot to differentiate it, and the fact that it is in reverse but not really. But still, there is that element of similar's good, the same but smaller I'm not sure about. But the overall design of it, I actually really like. Because mainly, again, it has that feel of an experimental kind of prototype vehicle to it. But also, it looks like a proper precursor to something that we have access to in 40k. Well, I say we. If you're playing Death Guard, you've got access to this. You have the Plague Burst Crawler. Now, that is really nicely similar. I think it works really, really well as a follow-on from that. And it looks like that has been done in such a way as to have that nod, which I really like. It provides that continuity. And, yeah, it looks weird, this thing. It looks properly weird. It looks really odd, but in the best possible way, because it still fits in with the rest of the stuff. It's still clearly, obviously, Space Marine. It still matches all the design cues for the rest of the stuff for 30k. But it looks experimental, it looks prototype, it looks like new technology mounted on something that has been retrofitted to hold it, which I really like. I like both of these things. I like both of them. The Saber, the only issue I have is just that it's like, is it maybe a bit too small? Is it a bit too similar? But then it serves a different purpose, and the weapon layout is different, and it doesn't have the side sponsons. Out of the two, though, that Legion Arquitor is really, really cool. It's just so odd, but in the best possible way. So yeah, a couple of new tanks from Forge World, and I really like the look of both of them. They both look kind of cool. One of them, keep going back and forth in terms of similarity, even though this one, I would argue, is more similar to the Sicaran. It doesn't bother me anywhere near as much, because it is so different, because it's so backwards, and because it has that crazy bombard on the back that used to be the front. It's just got something about it that I really like. It's speaking to my stupid kit bash tendencies. It looks like something that I would do for the sheer hell of it, which is probably why I like it as much as I do. Yeah, let me know what you think of those two in the comments down below. Do you like the new Saber and the Architour? Do you think they are a bit too close to the Sicaran? Do they look a bit shrunken baby? Or actually, do you not have a problem with that? Is it fine? Let me know what you think. As always, feel free to click all the things, Patreon, video, subscribe, all that stuff. Click it if you like, don't click if you don't want to. And as always, there's an affiliate link in the description for Element Games. You can click and buy something. If you buy something, I get something saying that way. 10% of what you spend goes to charity at the end of the month. It's just a nice way to support the channel because you're going to buy the plastic crack anyway. But you can do that if you'd like. I leave it entirely up to you. I'll see you for the next one. Toodaloo.